Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday. We'll give everyone just another minute or two to start trickling in, and then we will get started. And while we are trickling in, if anyone wants to say hi in the chat, say where you're from, feel free to go ahead and start sending that in. We're going to be using the chat a lot today, so go ahead and start getting comfortable with that. We've got Steph coming in, Brittany. Oh wow, you're all over the map. I love it. Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to our webinar on Proof Positive, how to measure and communicate ROI of marketing content. My name is Hannah Hedrick. I'm a customer success manager here at Litho, and I will be your host for today. We've got a really dynamite crew lined up for you. I'm so excited for you all to hear from our amazing panelists. And just to kind of set the stage a little bit and talk about why we are here. We know that one of the biggest challenges we often hear from marketing and creative teams is how do we prove ROI, right? That's something that's always top of mind. And I know as a CSM, it's something that I hear from nearly all my customers. And I think a lot of that challenge comes from, we know the value of our work. We're in it in the day to day. We feel it day to day. But how do we quantify that in a way that really resonates with leadership? So that is exactly what we're going to be diving into today. How Litho Reviews not only streamlines the creative approval process, but also delivers measurable impact. From faster turnaround times to clearer stakeholder alignment and higher quality output. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get into it. This is being recorded, so if you do have to jump for any reason, or as you hear something and you're like, oh my gosh, I have got to share this with somebody else on my team, don't worry, we've got you covered. You'll be able to find the recording on our website, on the Litho website, in the events section. This is a panel style format, so what that means is, while we do have some pre-planned questions just to get the ball rolling and staying on track, we do want to hear from you all. So as you have questions, if you have insights that you want to share, feel free to go ahead and pop those into the chat throughout the session today. We'll do our best to incorporate those into the conversation. We are not going to have a dedicated Q&A at the end or anything like that. We really just want to keep the entire hour open. So feel free to go ahead and start using that chat as you have questions and thoughts that you want to share too. All right, so without further ado, let's introduce the crew. Again, we've got a dynamite lineup for you all to hear from today. These are 3 Litho customers that have firsthand experience on using Litho reviews to drive efficiency and demonstrate ROI. Today, we've got Howard Schwartz, Assistant VP and Creative Services Manager at WSFS Bank, Melissa Bowers, Creative Project Manager at Georgia Power, and Lindsay Gerard, Educational Technology Content Manager at South Dakota State University Extension. And I will let you all introduce yourselves in just a moment, but just kind of wanted to take a second here and say I'm really excited for you all to hear from them because they each bring a really unique perspective, a unique approach to their creative approval process. They know how to use creative reviews that impacts efficiency, collaboration, business outcomes. And so because they all come from different industries with different challenges, different workflows, you all are going to walk away with some really great takeaways today, no matter what your team looks like. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And to kick things off, why don't we get to know our panelists a little bit? And Howard, we'll start with you. If you can share a little bit about your role at WSFS Bank, what your team is responsible for, and a little summary of what your current review process looks like.
Sure. Thank you, Hannah. First of all, thank you for having me today. And it's a little weird seeing myself on the screen because I attend these sessions, which are awesome. So thanks for having me. Thanks for hearing more about how WSFS Bank uses the litho environment and especially the review proof process. So as Hannah mentioned, my name is Howard Schwartz. I'm the Creative Services Manager at WSFS Bank. WSFS Bank is a little bit more than just a bank. We also have Bryn Mawr Trust, which is our wealth division, and some New Lane Finance and Cash Connect. So we handle multi divisions within our financial network. My role there as the creative services manager and the project manager is all the work flows in through me. And I manage a team of designers, videographers, animators, marketing associates that manage the digital platforms. We're kind of a one-stop shop. About the only thing we don't have is an in-house print shop. We've been using Litho for about 3 years, and it is drastically improved for the better our whole process. And excited to share how we use that review process because I think we're a little bit different than the other panelists, but I'm sure there's other people out there that would use it in the same way.
Awesome, thank you. Melissa?
Hey everybody, happy to be here today. So I am the creative project manager, or one of our creative project managers at Georgia Power, which is a utility company that covers the state of Georgia. And so we have an in-house agency, or we function kind of like an in-house agency amongst our creative teams. We have a digital team, a print shop, a graphic design team, and a photo video team. So I, in my role, support the larger brand campaigns as well as predominantly work with the photo video team. But as you can imagine, most of our work kind of is integrated and covers a little bit of everything. So we are pretty collaborative on our end. And the way that we have our review process set up is we've started using Litho we're almost at our 5-year mark. And so it has been a great tool that has really improved a lot of processes for us and has really streamlined the way that we look at reviews and the way that we filter them to our business partners. Most of our business partners are our internal business partners, not really external clients. Of course, most of our work is externally focused to our customers. So we have it set up so where it really does kind of go through our internal brand creative team, and then it goes to our business partners in other departments of the company. And then once that's done, then it goes out into the world or to the rest of the company as a final asset.
Thank you. And Lindsay?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lindsay Gerard, and I am SDSU Extension's Educational Technology Content Manager at South Dakota State University. As we are the state's land-grant university, our extension team is the official outreach arm of the university, so we serve every county in the state of South Dakota. We do, of course, a ton of public outreach, communication, and educational programs for everyone in South Dakota, as well as we have really strong regional and national partnerships with other land-grant universities. Our work is a little bit unique in that our staff are required to spend a portion of their appointment creating digital content so that we have those resources openly available for everyone to consume. So our primary role in that process, when it comes to us, it's been academically reviewed. It meets all of the metrics they want to meet in terms of their disciplinary standards. We incorporate the branding, we meet the accessibility, all of those pieces, put the content into a format on a platform that will perform well for them, that everyone can openly access. And that's where the review piece really comes in key for us, is making sure that we're not wasting any time and everybody has a clear picture of what that's going to look like and how it's going to perform when it goes out to the public.
And I think something else that would be helpful to touch on, just so everyone has an understanding of where you came from and kind of how we got to here. What were you doing to manage reviews before Litho? And we can go in reverse order. So we'll start with Lindsay this time.
We had a home, we'll call it home-baked request system where people could tell us what they wanted. but there wasn't any interactivity. It was basically just like a Dropbox kind of thing. So then all of our collaboration and proofing had to happen in email, which then leads to that, fun land that we all have lived in at some point or another, where, who has it, who's approved it, who didn't get it, was the email address right or wrong? Do we have any idea if they've even looked at it? So we had things that would get stuck for months. As those email conversations just kind of took on a life of their own. It was super painful.
Melissa, what about you?
So a little similar to Lindsay, we did use a project management tool, a different project management tool. However, the review setup and process in that tool was not very intuitive, and it was not as detailed as what we have with Litho. So it was a mix of going through that tool, but then also email, and kind of trying to keep up with both of them. Not all of our creative teams at that point were on the management tool. So you had 2 out of 3 or 2 out of 4 creative teams using it, but then other teams just using email, and then also kind of going back and forth between the two. So it was a little scattered, and as you can imagine, a lot of things got lost in the mix. So this is much better. We have much better process now.
And Howard?
Yeah, for us, very similar to the previous answers. The majority of it was done through email. We have a secondary review piece with the bank. We have bank compliance with bank compliance, fair lending, and legal. And I'm sure they have some, Lindsay and Melissa have some similarities there. And for that piece of the puzzle, we used a different product, but it was so simple. It was more just kind of like a list it, and then compliance would go out and review it. There was no auditing. There was no accountability. But compared to the other two ladies who spoke before me, it was all done through email. And I don't know about everybody on the call or other panelists. I mean, I could get like 500 emails a day. So, things would just get lost in just the email abyss. So, the scheduling feature, I mean, if you pare it down to the whole Litho environment, it's a date system, right? It revolves around dates. So that key feature for us was key to keep everybody on track, like Lindsay and Melissa mentioned.
Like people in the chat empathize, understanding the dark days of email abyss. I think that's something that definitely resonates with everyone. So it's validating to hear that we know where you're at now, and we're going to get into that in a second. But yeah, I think a lot of people can relate coming from email and understanding the many pain points and challenges that come with that, and why it is so critical to have a source of truth to manage all of that.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you all for those wonderful introductions. Again, I'm really excited because you do each have unique perspectives, unique approaches to all of your workflows and your creative approval process. So now that we have that foundation laid, let's talk about something that is always top of mind, ROI. I don't think it's any secret that measuring the impact of our work is not always straightforward, especially for marketing and creative content. But we know that proving value is key, right? And for maintaining and obtaining that leadership buy-in and making informed decisions throughout the life cycle. So let's dig into that a little bit, especially thinking about how ROI tends to be different across organizations, sometimes even across teams. So Melissa, can you share a little bit with us about how your organization defines ROI as it relates to reviews?
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the greatest lessons we've learned and that we've really kind of caught on to is looking at the metrics from our review process. And by that, I mean, Litho is really great with being able to pull many different types of reports with many different numbers. So looking at the data has really helped us figure out why we like Litho so much and why this review process works for our teams and our company. Now that we've been using it for almost 5 years, I think that the majority of the company, and of course the people that we work with the most often, know the process. They know how to use Litho. They know when they get an email notification that there's something in there for them to look at. So it's helped us in kind of defining how we communicate and collaborate with one another when we're reviewing assets. And that's really valuable and something that we didn't really have before we were using the tool. Also, I think looking at those data points and pulling those reports really allows us to see where our hiccups might be, and then we can address them, and then that can become a smoother process. So it's a really good way for us to constantly be tweaking and reevaluating how we're working and how we're working with our business partners and even our own internal teams to improve process and improve our style of communication. And so that's really probably been the biggest, in my point of view, ROI with using the review process, because it's so streamlined and easy to use, that it really has helped all of our communicators and all of our business partners, whether you're a creative mindset or a more data-driven mindset. It's really helpful for all of those types of thinkers.
And if I could play off of that, because it's really similar to what Melissa mentioned. I completely agree 100%, Melissa, with what you got going on there. And to add to that as an example, we do all that at WSFS. And on top of that, for a specific example, we tracked a number of revisions in a proof review to see how many times that goes. And what I've worked with our director of brand, who I report to, is we set goals for my design team's objectives and appraisals for the year. So for example, we try and set a goal around 2 to 3 revisions, right? And probably half the people out there are probably laughing 2 to 3, because in the creative world, that could probably be in the teens and the 20s, but we try and do that. If we don't hit that, then I do a deep dive on that to really analyze what happened. Was it scope creep? Or what I'm really looking for, the scope creep I'll address with the customer. But what I'm really looking for is development of my team, right? Did we have poor execution to meet the requirements of what they asked? Because that's another form of ROI that I'm looking for to generate productivity, in our marketing department. So again, completely agree. Ditto answer for Melissa, but just one specific example. We take it even further, where we connect a lot of that data to profits and loss of each effort of the bank, using time tracking and hours and costs associated with that, potentially for a specific campaign. So there's definitely a lot of ROI on multi-levels with the review process.
Yeah, Howard, you mentioned that productivity, and that was our key selling point. We were fortunate that our administration was supportive from the get-go, because we all agreed that things getting caught in proof and never getting out to the public was one of our biggest problems. We had tremendous talent on the authoring side, tremendous talent on the creative side, but things were, never getting out where people could consume and use those tools. So we agreed on the problem to begin with, which was nice. I didn't have to do a lot of justifying and reporting. We could just start and roll right into making it work. But at the end of the day, how many deliverables we can produce with our really small team is what is key, because every piece of content we produce is designed to help somebody.
It looks like we've got a question in the chat that I want to throw to the group. Yvette says their team has an issue with the timeout rule for approvals, and they've established a 72-hour limit, but when the weekend comes, it eats up all the time and people get skipped. Does that resonate with any of you? Do you have any advice for how to tackle that?
For us, we run into that all the time. The reviews are constantly expiring. There's only so many hours in a day. I feel like I constantly are shifting dates, and we're trying to work internally how to improve that. So I'd be open to hearing some other answers as well. I will say the really nice feature about the proof review system, when you send something out for review, is you can re-notify people. And we take full advantage of that feature. And it's gotten to some degree so bad that I literally had a internal customer reach back out to a designer and say, I know, I need to get to it. Stop re-notifying me, but we're getting our point across. And it's a, it's a constant problem for us as well. So I'd be interested in hearing how Lindsay and Melissa handle that.
I think we do also have that problem. I think one of the best things that, and I'll be honest, we're not always great at this either, but I think one of the best things we should be doing is setting the expectation at the beginning of the project, especially for these quick turn project deadline driven things that we're doing, or something that really has a hard due date and is not flexible. So I think setting that expectation with your clients or your business partners who are the reviewers up front to just establish, hey, this needs your look, you need to look at this quickly, or at least quickly after it's sent to you. We want them to spend the time looking at it thoroughly. We don't want them to rush through the review, but we want them to get to it quickly if it's something that is a quick turn project or has a hard, inflexible deadline. And setting those expectations up front might help, and communicating that up front so that everybody might be on the same page about that. And then again, re-notifying them, setting the expiration. I think a lot of times I get emails back when the review has expired. That notification is sent to the business partner, and then they email me, forward me that, and they're like, hey, I didn't get to this before the expiration date. Can you reopen it again? And we'll do that, of course, but then it's like, okay, please take the time to look at it as soon as you have that time. So I think just expectation setting helps in those instances.
That this question brings back some not so awesome memories, because within the first 6 months of launching Litho, because I had sold this as like the end all be all solution to all of our problems, and I was watching the numbers, especially on our time to proof and time to finish, and I was like, oh man, maybe it is us, maybe the problem is us. So I did a lot of workshopping and brainstorming, and one of the key things that came out of that was that we had too much baked into our review at the wrong point in the process. So there were some key pieces that we pulled out into an earlier point in our workflow, some of them even prior to submission. We were like, hey, we know this could take anywhere from 3 to 39 days. Do that before you submit, because it's flexible, it varies by department, things like that. So we identified those pieces that could come out that Litho couldn't help us fix because it's a people problem, not a technology problem. The other thing that we do with most of our creative pieces is that we don't use the deadline piece, because it never fails that the minute it expires on a weekend is when a faculty member came back to campus and finally had time to look at it and they can't access it. And that's super frustrating. So what we use instead on most of our work is the due date feature. So we get that notification that that proof is sitting overdue. So we have a trigger to remind us to take the next step rather than having to go search through all of our open work. But the proof is still open, so they can get in and access at any time, but we've got kind of a backup system to keep things moving on our end.
This is great. I'm hearing so many like golden nuggets here between you and the chat. The chat is popping off. Someone suggested using a tag for extended deadline to track those. So, that would be a really easy way of running a report, filtering by that tag and seeing like, how often is this happening? Is this a process issue, or is this a repeat offender that we need to address? Reporting always allows us to dig into the problem and decide how we are going to move forward. Lots of other great suggestions here in the chat. I'm just scanning through to see if we have any other questions. Got a lot of just really good suggestions here. Love it.
Optional reviewers are amazing.
Yes.
Including in their message, hey, you're an optional reviewer. You will probably have a day to look at this. If not, we're moving forward.
Yeah.
The other thing that we've started doing on not only tasking but reviews is using the priority feature. We've created levels with rush, high, normal, and low, and that seemed to help a bit as well with reviews. and the normal litho tasking that's created with my design team. We use that an awful lot to determine our priority list.
Excellent. Love that. Well, these are really great insights on measuring ROI, and it's, I think, really clear that tracking is key. But so much of that comes from the collective day-to-day efficiencies of the entire team, right? So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some more tangible ways that Litho Reviews has helped optimize your workflows. And a lot of this we've kind of already touched on, but we know that reviews tend to be where a lot of bottlenecks can happen. We see things happen like multiple unnecessary versions, unclear, conflicting, never-ending feedback, or maybe sometimes just waiting on those reviewers to submit their darn review, right? And again, I know we've already kind of touched on a lot of this, but I'm curious how else has the review process helped streamline other parts of your workflow? Lindsay, have you seen improvements in turnaround times or fewer errors, anything along those lines?
Yes, a tremendous improvement in turnaround time. The other thing that we were able to do that plays into how we do our proofs now is we use the campaign forms, so they can ask for multiple things at once that all go together. And then on the back end, rather than you get a proof on Tuesday from the designer and you get a proof on Thursday from the videographer, we try to build those projects out so that you get a comprehensive proof all at once. So that if you want to change the date, if we had the date wrong or what have you, that can be made once. Everybody is aware of it. We don't have to rely on people to try to connect and catch it after it's been published and things like that. One of the pieces that we kind of use as we continuously improve our system, Donna Habersat, who's a user experience specialist, always told me that you have to add structure to improve flexibility, which sounds so backwards, but it is my go-to quote for almost everything. Almost always when we're running our reports, when we're looking at where we're seeing issues, we can go back to, okay, do we have the data we need to begin with in the right place at the right time for the right people? So that's how we've approached that.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's such a balance of finding that structure. Like, we have to have the guardrails up, we have to have a process, but we have to also leave room to be adaptable. That's another huge part that I think can sometimes get overlooked when we're trying to just follow these rigid guidelines. And it's finding that happy medium so that both can work at the same time. Melissa, what about you? How has your review process helped streamline other parts of your process?
Yeah, well, first, Lindsay, you're my new best friend, because I say that all the time about having a process and having some structure allows you to actually pivot more easily, and be more flexible. So thank you for saying that. I think for us, it's really helped. I keep going back to communication, and when you're working with there's almost 7,000 employees at Georgia Power, and we serve 2.7 million customers. So I think when you have that large of a span, you have to really tailor how you communicate with different people and different groups of people. And so within our review process, I think one of the things that's been most valuable is once sometimes we call them repeat offenders when they're doing something over and over and over, that, we're on review 17 and it's like, this happens with you all the time. It has really helped us identify our coworkers who maybe aren't at the beginning the most detail-oriented people, or they have this idea in their head, but they don't quite know how to articulate it in a manner that we know exactly what they're looking for. And then you also have the reverse of that, right? You have the people who definitely know what they want. They articulate it very well and give us all the details we need. And then we can turn that around, put it through the review, and they sign off on it almost immediately. So I think the review process has really helped that for us of identifying when we're working with somebody that we've worked with a lot before. Okay, this is how we need to communicate with them. This is what we need to provide to them to make them feel comfortable looking at their asset, and then provide that valuable feedback to us. It also allows us, and just from the beginning of a project request to, okay, I need to sit down and have a conversation with this business partner before I can hand off the project. Whereas other people, they can submit it. I know exactly what they want. I can pass it off to the video producer or the graphic designer, and like no questions really need to be asked. We know what we're working towards. So the review process is really great for that, and the way that the review is set up, where they can mark up those things, is really helpful. On videos specifically, people who aren't in the video world or who don't look at a lot of videos, if you said, give me the time code for where you need an edit made, they're gonna say, well, I don't understand what a time code is. What do you mean? So it's easy to explain, but when it's in the litho review, they have a markup tool. They can use that and literally mark the exact moment or the exact edit that they need changed, whether that's on a web page, a video, or a one-page flyer, or a print ad, anything like that. So I think it's really helped kind of the communication aspect, and then, you know, hopefully that cuts down on the review versions that we're doing, um, and promoting more thoughtful reviews throughout the process. So again, I mentioned this earlier, you're taking the time to look at the review instead of just powering through it, and then we turn it around for you to look at it again after we've made edits, and you're giving us all new edits that were there on the previous version as well. So I think it's improved our communication and turnaround time on that for sure.
And there is a question in the chat about the amount of intake you receive in a year. So I guess it would be helpful if everyone would like to go around and just, you know, give us a ballpark of like, what does that volume look like for you, so we have that context.
I'll say for us, we've consistently been doing over 3,000 projects a year across all of our teams. So of course that kind of varies by team. The print shop, for instance, does the most amount of work. I think hopefully that's obvious why that is. They're turning out all sorts of things to all of our customers on a very consistent basis. But yeah, we're upwards of 3,000 projects pretty consistently every single year.
Wow. Lindsay?
We run around 2,000 projects. Since we're not entirely in-house, and since we are in academia, that number has a little bit of nuance to it, because we do a lot of coordination with external contractors. So a lot of times within that project, there might be multiple vendor relationships and things like that. So that's something that I have my eye on trying to improve this year, is really capturing, you know, the broad scope of some of that work that doesn't go through the traditional process.
Gotcha. And Howard?
Yeah, we're between 3,000 and 5,000. I've got an average of 150 to 200 projects active at once that I need to manage. So there's a lot going on there. I did want to circle back on that last question, because we are different. The WSFS Bank committed to using litho, and then they hired me about a month later, and surprise, here's your workflow management tool, and learning it. But I come from pharmaceutical, defense contractor, and manufacturing background. And in every in-house company that I've worked with, if you're in the creative world, you're constantly fighting this battle between what's a creative in-house and the way a typical ad agency works. And I've had mentors that try and find that middle ground, and that's kind of where I try and live. And for me, the LIFO process and the review process, I kind of looked at it and I said, you know, I got to break this up, right? I got to break this up for, you know, requirements. We tack time, accountability, and then I have a compliance cog. So for us, I've literally broken it out by skill set. So a typical flow for us is content development. But then I do a LIFO review to review that content before it even gets to design. I'm a heritage designer. So for me, it was incredibly frustrating when we're making all these changes in the design phase. There's nothing worse for a designer than when that scope creep happens, right? So I tried to eliminate that by getting that content 98% locked down. So we do content development, content review. We have our marketing review tier, and then I have subject matter expert SMEs on their own tier within that review process. So those groups are being handled at. When that content is finalized and approved, then I move into design development. Then I have a design review. Again, it goes through the same people, the marketing department, and then it goes through the SMEs to get that sign off. Each one of those categories allows me to track time and all those things. Again, we talked about ROI and metrics, so then I can break those things down with custom tags. Once my design is approved by the marketing team and the SMEs, I then have a whole nother proof review line item for our compliance team. And compliance could be my bank compliance team, it can be the legal team, and it can also be in the financial world, fair lending, because we're audited in a lot of those areas. By separating them out from all the marketing, they don't see all of our chatter, because this was already mentioned by Lindsay and Melissa. There's usually a lot of back and forth, and that's where it's really helped the bottleneck, where if we're in email, I mean, imagine how many trees that can stem off and different emails, and it's all over the place. By having it in one consolidated place where I can tag people, bring people in that might not be initially associated with the project, but they are a subject matter expert for maybe one sentence, I can tag them, highlight them in there, as Lindsay mentioned, with all the tools, or Melissa mentioned, and then I can get that answer right there. It's tracked, it's audited, and I also can go back there. There's no more he said, she said, there's no more finding it in an email. It's all there. Everybody's on the same page. It also happens in my compliance review route. Where those questions get answered, and the compliance departments, where normally that would go off into this crazy email, are all there in the system, and I'm just sitting there eating popcorn, watching them talk it all out, solving the problems, because I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, I didn't go to school for that, nor did I want to, but it's all there, and it really helps me by separating them out, having it on there. By teaching compliance how to use the tool, the bonus thing for me and the bottleneck and the time saver is really not even my main job. It has to do with, I taught these compliance people that they can conduct their own audits. Normally they would come to me and say, hey, we need to see all the lending products that we've done in 2024 for an audit. Now they go in there, they know how to search those features because I've got custom fields, custom tags. They can find all that stuff in a great reporting feature, and I don't even know it's happening. Versus before, it literally would take me a day and a half to collect all those collaterals and provide all that. That has been a game changer for us, for other departments. So one of the key takeaways that I would say in this whole thing is, don't think about just your area. Think about how this tool can help your whole company and scale it. That's been a huge thing. The LIFO review process and audit process has become WSFS Bank, WSFS Financial Court, our top shareholder level tool of standard for auditing the bank in our creative assets.
Howard, can I ask you a question? So you mentioned like bringing people in that weren't originally associated with it, but then you realize, oh, we need this person to look at this one little piece of it. How do you manage that person being brought in not having say or an opinion on the whole rest of it, and like almost too many cooks in the kitchen? I think one of the things that we've sometimes struggled with in the past is if we include everybody on a review, then it gets a little hairy of who do we listen to when they're contradicting each other, or we just need you to focus on this one part, but then it's really hard and unnatural not to have an opinion on the rest of it. So how do you guys manage that part when you have to bring somebody in?
It is challenging. I will say keeping people in their swim lanes, as I like to call it, to bust out the thesaurus of keyword of metaphors. I will say it is challenging. My compliance department does sometimes stretch a little bit, but we've had a lot of conversations with them and their management to say, hey, I get you don't like the color blue, but the reality is that's our job, right? And they're respectful. I think sometimes it is helpful because there's been things there where we we miss things. I mean, look, we're human, right? As much as we like to think we're the SMEs of this world, we make mistakes. So there's some avenues where they'll be like, hey, shouldn't there be a comma here? Or hey, shouldn't this be capitalized? And for those things, we're grateful for. The opinion of, not sure if this is a great image type of thing. Well, yeah, you know what, as a designer, and you talk to any designer, they're like, stay in your lane. And I hear you. I'm pretty direct. I have those conversations, or for me, I go in there and I think I saw somebody mention something on the chat about, educating people. I believe we continually need to educate people, but at the same time, I feel we can be educated in marketing as well. I feel like I'm with the ladies. I'm all about process. That's why I love Litho. Like, it's process oriented. And I tell my team, if you stay with the process, I will die on that hill for you. The second you step out of that process, I don't know if I can help you. So I think it's constant communication, and that's the key with everything, right? Helping them to understand, thank you, but we're good. But it is a challenge. I'm not going to lie, Melissa. It is.
Question for both of you. Do you leave interaction on proofs open after the proof has ended, or is it closed, where as soon as they submit, all comments are done and it's final and we're moving on?
Currently, we're open. However, I literally yesterday had a discussion because we're working on our annual report right now, our next year's strategic plan and our annual report. And as anybody that works on annual reports know, you are on a timetable because that legally has to be in hands and stockholders by X day. And my content writer yesterday said, it'd be great if we could turn. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I can do that, but I'm not telling her right now. So I need to reevaluate that. I'd love for people to chime in on the chat and give us some feedback on that. But currently, we're open. I will say, though, Lindsay, it has helped.
Yeah.
Because we talk about the deadlines and all those wonderful things. Well, if I want to keep moving it, but somebody's just not getting back to me, and then finally they do, and they tag me, I will say that is the key function, though, that in the review process user guide, Hannah, needs to be added. I know in my world, I've really tried to train our population to tag somebody, direct a question to somebody. Otherwise, it kind of just sits out there. And we, as a lesson learned for us, that was a lesson learned early on. Somebody said, well, didn't you see my comment about XYZ? And we're like, well, no, we moved on. And you go back and you look and you're like, oh, but it's like that blind thing. But once people get the hang of, at Howard or at Lindsay or at Melissa, at least the project manager's aware of it, and then we can direct it or secretly ignore it if we want, type of thing.
How about you, Melissa?
So ours is actually closed for the most part. However, I will say, I saw a person in the chat say, is anything ever truly final? And I hate that I have to chuckle at that, but we do sometimes run in, sometimes it is final and we're done and it's great and we know we can move on and it's going to be perfect. And then other times, 2 days later, oh, hey, but I was thinking about this more and I want to change one other thing. So at that point, when that happens, they're IMing us, they're emailing us, and then it kind of gets out of the normal process. So at that point, the project managers really have to make a decision. Okay, do we open this back up? And is this something that we do need to reevaluate and address? Or is it I understand your concern, but at this point, we have to move on and we have a final asset that has to go live. So it's a balance and weighing kind of the priority of the project, what the project is. I think it's hard because there's not a really clear answer every single time.
There's a couple questions in the chat I want to circle back to. Howard, one was in reference to how you have your tasks and proofs structured. Someone asked the question, oh, I just lost it. If you have separate tasks and proofs, how do you report on the number of versions? If you have separate proofs, rather.
So it's actually very easy, right? Because I have to break it out, it allows me to pull reviews on content reviews and design reviews and compliance reviews. I also use a lot of tags, and I tag them that way. Literally, content review, design review, compliance review. And by my account rep Nick, he's all due respect, Hannah, he's the best. He's awesome, and he and I really worked that out. Anybody who uses the Litho project, I highly encourage you to have conversations with your account rep. They are incredibly knowledgeable and have helped tremendously. And Nick is a rock star. He really is. And he's really helped me kind of think these things out. I try and be 5 steps ahead. And Nick and I work together and we've identified all those tasks. So from a reporting structure, it allows me to pull a report based on those tags. And that's the simplest way really to do it.
Yeah, can confirm Nick is amazing. And there's another question here. If you have all these projects and they're coming in and out, how do your designers manage their tasks and getting the edits back on time? They are struggling when multiple reviews come back and they all have their work. It starts to pile up. Designers only see the overall due date of the project ending, not when they need to get a proof back out.
Well, for me, I'm a big fan of custom views. I think custom views, that feature alone, again, game changer. Because what I have is I have custom reviews built up for my whole team. And, you know, once you really understand the layers of Litho from campaign, you know, from work makes projects, project make campaigns, right? So I've almost trained my designers to ignore campaigns, ignore projects, and focus on work. I, as the project manager, I'm sure Lindsay and Melissa are very similar, look at projects and campaigns. And I have a morning stand-up every morning for 20 minutes that I kind of make sure my designer's view is set right. Again, I use the priority feature. I think that's huge. You know, so they kind of know what they need to do for the day. Listen, I told you I manage about 150 to 200 projects. I have 2 in-house designers. I have 1 in-house writer. I have 2 contract designers, and my in-house designers are also my video recorders, my video videographers, and my animators. I have 1 HTML designer. So when it comes to making the best use out of a staff, trust me, I'm there. If I could hire 3 times that right now, budget wise, I would. So I get it. You know, there was a comment, another questionnaire about, you know, not tagging the designers. I get it. We've educated our population. They tag me, and I'm the quarterback. My designers, if they get tagged in something for some reason and I'm not aware about, they immediately tag me. They don't answer it. So, you know, I think it takes a real strong project manager to ensure those daily things. And being a designer and also being a creative project manager, I know the best of both worlds. So for me, I've tried to take the things off of the designer's plates that I know is going to bog them down. That was a lesson I learned 15 years ago at a previous company because they wanted designers to do everything. And most designers, not me, most designers are introverts. It doesn't work. It's just literally a red flag for failures. I get sometimes that's the way it is, and you got to do the best.
Yeah, we're really similar with the custom views. We've trained all of our creative teammates to set up a custom view on their Litho account and use that. And I think the other thing that our teams are really good about is if they get in a bind and they get overwhelmed or they don't know what is the priority, they're all really good about coming to the project managers and saying like, I'm stuck, I don't know, you know, I'm being pulled in all these different directions. What should I be focusing on? And we work together to figure that out. And I think, you know, I'm constantly looking at the custom views because that's my cue of like who has what workload so that I know when I'm assigning something, this person's skill set is best suited for this project, but they're overloaded right now, so let me figure out a different solution. So I think a lot of that is just collaboration between the designers, producers, developers, and the project manager or whomever is accepting projects and assigning work to help figure that out, if they are struggling and prioritizing their work and such.
I am envious of the organization that the designers on my team have. They're amazing people to work with. They are going to be the first people that are championing that project right when it's submitted and saying, hey, this date is that date is that. If you want this, I have to have it by this date. Otherwise we can't do it. Or so being really clear about that communication up front. A non-litho tool that we rely on super heavily is time blocking. Because sometimes we have to do large format, like 60 chapter books are our favorite. And those are, of course, they take a ton of time. So we try to block those out and schedule them ahead of time. So making sure that we have that availability in Litho, that due dates are getting set on things so that all of those views and calendars can help us rather than them just having to sit and kind of spin in that overwhelm for a while.
The last thing I want to add is, and I saw this in the chat, and I do the same thing, is my designers and content writers send the proofs out, but I'm also assigned as a team member on that. So when they come out, when they come back in, I get that status update, and that also helps me stay organized and potentially remind that person, hey, that one came back, that's a high priority. I know these other came back, you know, and again, as a project manager, that's our role to assign that priority. But being on those reviews is incredibly helpful to help manage the time blocking.
Agree with that.
This has been so insightful. Thank you all so much for sharing all of these insights. There's so many things my brain is spinning with, and I'm sure our audience feels the same. You know, we've talked about how we are streamlining the review process, improving efficiency, but we're taking that a step further because those efficiencies really translate into real business impact, right? At the end of the day, creative teams are not just producing assets, they should be driving strategic outcomes for the business. You know, whether it is getting campaigns out the door faster, reducing costs, improving collaboration across teams, that review process really does play a critical role in hitting the bigger business goals. So as we are starting to wrap up here, I would love to kind of shift into some advice for our audience. We've already been sharing lots of amazing tips and tricks, but thinking about how ROI is not just about tracking the right metrics. That's obviously a huge part, but none of that's any good if we are not communicating the value effectively to leadership, right? So thinking about, like, do we need to justify the cost for investing in a new tool? Do we need to drive adoption across teams? Or maybe we just need to make a case for process improvements. However you showcase that value really does matter. So Lindsay, I'm curious to hear from you. When others are looking to measure and prove the value of reviews, what advice would you give to others who are looking to get that off the ground?
I think the biggest lesson learned in this area, especially as I've grown our team and grown in my role, is that, you know, that once a month report, that quarterly admin meeting, those things are absolutely super important. But so much more importantly than that, it is demonstrating that value day in, day out. Making sure that you're aware of and addressing. So you have the client complaint and you have the creative team complaint. And it used to feel a little bit like mediation, and now we have data to just deal with reality and solve the problems. But making sure that you're addressing, if people are saying, you know, hey, I feel like it's a black hole. Okay, how do we remediate that? Can we put data behind that? Can we show our progress in real time and deal with it today, not next month when we have to run our report about it? I would say that's the biggest advice I can give that hasn't already been covered by this amazing panel.
Love that. Melissa, any advice that you would leave with our crew?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Lindsay, and using that data to show leadership. You need leadership buy-in, and the way to get leadership buy-in is to show them the data. And so that has really helped us. And, we pull reports like Lindsay does for our leadership, regularly, but in our department meetings, we also bring up like, hey, this is how many projects we've been accepting this year, and this is where we are, and just having the project managers give those updates throughout the year to the whole team has really, I think, been eye-opening for a lot of people and created the buy-in of like, oh, I can help them by working with our business partners and kind of really being choosy on, is this a strategic move? So, we want to try to stay away from those kind of one-off projects that are low stakes, right? So that we have more time to do the higher stake projects that have the biggest reach and that really do touch on our company values and our focus areas. And so I think using the data to prove that and to communicate, you're going to communicate to your leadership a little differently than you're going to communicate to your clients or your business partners. And using that data can help you do that. And then that gets their buy-in on why this is such a great tool. And then they can then also be an example to help you out. It starts with leadership and it starts from the top. So if your leadership isn't setting that example and supporting that, then your creative teammates aren't going to support it. Your business partners aren't going to support it. And it's just going to be an uphill climb for those of us who do support it and really want, everybody to get on board. So I think really just talking and being open with your leadership about it, but coming with some data, even if it's before you're using the Litho tool, what data is working against you, to kind of show them we need this or we need something similar to this.
So true. Yeah. And data is just such a good, clear, objective way to look at that, right? Howard, what about you?
So we keep saying data, and what I would say that is collect it all. I mean, the data is going to tell the story. So when you set project management workflow tools up, like go over and above what you think you actually need collecting data. I collect so much. The thing about my situation is I'm from the creative side, but one thing that we didn't really touch on here is I also have a communications team, and I also have an analytics team, product development team. They all use Litho, and they're not creative. It is not strictly a creative. I mean, I'm creative, but I'm only one piece of the puzzle. But that really helps the story. We're on the beta version right now of Insights, and if you haven't really used that tool, it's going to blow your mind the data you can do versus we were taking it out through Power BI and doing some stuff. But that data is really going to help you create those business cases that everybody's talking about. Staffing needs, or hey, look, man, there's the unfortunate RIF that in your career, hopefully you never experience it. RIF, reduction in force, like that data is there. It just tells you everything. You can collect it all and trim it down. That's okay. But if it's not there, you have no data. And I would say that's the key. And the other advice I could say is everything evolves. If you commit to a workflow tool like Litho and you're like, oh, I got this all figured out, my rep said this and this and that, it's going to evolve. It's going to change, and it's going to continue to change. But what I can tell you is, if you hate change, this is a good change. Every time you change things in the tool, it is actually for the better. And that has been really a plus for us, because it's one of those things where people think, oh, that's your process, Howard, and you don't want to change it. And the people that know me and work with me know that's not the case, because I realize there might be another way. As much as I try and think about looking at it from different angles, I'm going to miss one. So collect all the data and be open to it be evolving. How you work that process would be my two keys of advice.
Amazing. Well, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I feel like we could keep doing this for hours. I kind of hate that we have to wrap up now. But Howard, Melissa, Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your experiences, your lessons learned. It's truly been incredible to see how you each approach measuring ROI with reviews. And I know our attendees have taken away some really valuable strategies that they can now start to apply in their own organizations. Thank you to everyone who joined us as well. We sincerely appreciate your time and engagement. I I hope this discussion has given you new ideas and inspiration for your own review processes. If you do have any follow-up questions or want to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to your CSM, success@litho.com, or, you know, when in doubt, you can always reach out to support@litho.com and they can point you in the right direction. We'd love to keep the dialogue going. Thank you again for our wonderful panelists. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you again, and we hope to see you all at another Litho event soon, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.